Hello everyone, I'm Heather, the Director of Education here at the National Museum of the Mighty 8th Air Force. And I would like to welcome you here today. Today I am in our Honoring the 8th section exhibit in the museum in front of the 303rd Bomb Group's exhibit case and standing in front of a very important artifact of a member of the 303rd that I am going to talk to you about today, and that is Tech Sergeant Forrest Vosler. He was a radio operator with the 303rd Bomb Group, 358th Squadron. And on December 20th of 1943, on a mission to Bremen, Germany, Tech Sergeant Forrest Vosler displayed remarkable tenacity and courage by continuing to fire his guns and declining to take first aid, all to help save fellow crew members. And with that, he will receive the Medal of Honor. And this is Tech Sergeant Forrest Vosler's Medal of Honor here on display in the museum. And it is just an honor to have his Medal of Honor here on exhibit at the museum. Forrest Vosler enlisted as a private in the Army at Rochester, New York, October 8th, 1942. He attended radio operator and mechanic school and flexible gunnery school and was then assigned, of course, to the 303rd Bomb Group, 358th Squadron at Molesworth of the 8th Air Force as a radio operator in October of 1943. On his fourth combat mission, so it's only his fourth combat mission, he's a crew member on the B-17 Jersey Bounce Jr., and they're on a mission to Bremen. Their plane is cut off from the formation. It's badly damaged by flak and enemy fighter attacks. The Jersey Bounce is rapidly losing altitude. A 20mm cannon shell severely wounded the tail gunner. Shrapnel had ripped through the radio compartment, wounding Forrest Woody, as his nickname, Vosler in the legs and damaging the radio. Bombers on the raid earlier that month had encountered only light resistance, but this mission to Bremen is very, very different. Nearly 500 B-17s and B-24s took off from bases across England, and only 27 would not return. After their formation, they're crossed into Holland. More than 100 German fighters are going to engage the bombers in a running fight all the way to Bremen. Near the target, the bombers are also, of course, going to run into heavy flak from the ground, but the Jersey Bounce Jr. is able to reach its target and drop its bomb load. By this time, pilot John Henderson turns the plane back towards the North Sea and home, on their return to mission, and the B-17 loses power in one engine, and another engine is smoking and losing power, but they're unable to keep up. The Jersey Bounce Jr., of course, falls behind the formation, and to quote ball turret gunner Ed Ruppel later said, "As I glanced off to my right, I could see 4 or 5 B-17s being attacked by fighters. There was one B-17 that was pretty close to us. The German fighters cut off his wings, and he went into a tight roll. Then they went after others. They just kept pecking away at them until they got them all. I knew that when the fighters were finished with them, we were next." Though bleeding profusely in his legs, Vosler was able to shake off his fear, man the single 50 caliber machine gun at the radio hatch, and keep up a steady volume of fire, protecting the aircraft. Fully expecting to die, he thought to himself, if this is the way it's going to be, at least I'm going to die standing up. I'll do my job. He continued firing until another 20 millimeter shell exploded in his face. It peppered him with shrapnel wounds from his forehead to his knees, sending shards of metal into both of his eyes. The shell fragments had damaged the retina of his right eye, and he was seeing blood streaming down inside of his eye, thinking it was on the outside. So he said, my natural feeling was that I had lost the whole side of my face. Barely able to see and slipping in and out of consciousness, Vosler returned to his damaged radio, which he soon repaired by touch and with the help of fellow crewmen. By then, the Jersey Bounce Jr. was skimming the wave tops of the English Channel, and Vosler first sent an SOS and then transmitted regular holding signals that led search and rescue planes to their position. Once their B-17 is going to ditch into the English Channel, and he's going to crawl out on the fuselage unaided. And then in a moment of selfless courage, he jumps to the starboard wing to keep the unconscious tail gunner from slipping into the freezing water. And we've actually we have a painting here in our collection that shows Vosler trying to hold the very injured tail gunner up onto the wing and he holds onto him with one hand while gripping the plane's antenna wire so that they both don't slide into the freezing water until the rest of the crewmates can get to them with their dinghies, their life rafts. And both men, Vosler and their tail gunner, are able to get into the dinghy. But the injuries in Vosler's eyes will leave him not being able to see, but doctors later will be able to restore sight in his left eye, but not his right eye. So Vosler will survive. He will be awarded the Medal of Honor at the White House at a ceremony on September 6th of 1944. There is a photo in the collection that states the date was August 31st of 1944, but all other research that I've done states that it took place on September 6th of 1944, so the photograph was most likely mislabeled. President Franklin D. Roosevelt is going to be there to award the Medal of Honor. Vosler will, of course, continue on with his life, and he will actually work for the Veterans Administration as a job he kept until his death in 1992 at the age of 68. Tech Sergeant Forrest Vosler's Medal of Honor citation reads, for conspicuous gallantry in action against the enemy above and beyond the call of duty while serving as a radio operator air gunner on a heavy bombardment aircraft in a mission over Bremen, Germany on 20 December 1943. After bombing the target, the aircraft in which Tech Sergeant Vosler was serving was severely damaged by anti-aircraft fire, forced out of the formation, and immediately subjected to repeated vicious attacks by enemy fighters. Early in the engagement, a 20 millimeter cannon shell exploded in the radio compartment, painfully wounding Tech Sergeant Vosler in the legs and thighs. At about the same time, a direct hit on the tail of the ship seriously wounded the tail gunner and rendered the tail guns inoperative. Realizing the great need for firepower in protecting the vulnerable tail of the ship, Tech Sergeant Vosler, with grim determination, kept up a steady stream of deadly fire. Shortly thereafter, another 20 millimeter enemy shell exploded, wounding Tech Sergeant Vosler in the chest and about the face. Pieces of metal lodged in both eyes, impairing his vision to such an extent that he could only distinguish blurred shapes. Displaying remarkable tenacity and courage, he kept firing his guns and declined to take first aid treatment. The radio equipment had been rendered inoperative during the battle, and when the pilot announced that he would have to ditch, although unable to see and working entirely by touch, Tech Sergeant Vosler finally got the set operating and sent out distress signals despite several lapses into unconsciousness. When the ship ditched, Tech Sergeant Vosler managed to get out on the wing by himself and hold the wounded tail gunner from slipping off until the other crew members could help them get into the dinghy. Tech Sergeant Vosler's actions on this occasion were an inspiration to all serving with him. The extraordinary courage, coolness, and skill he displayed in the face of great odds when handicapped by injuries that would have incapacitated the average crew member were outstanding. And that is the citation that resulted in Tech Sergeant Forrest Woody Vosler receiving the Medal of Honor. And here it is right here. So if you're ever in Savannah, please stop by and join and visit the museum and see our amazing exhibits, and make sure to always stop by the 303rd Bomb Group case and see many of their other amazing artifacts in their case and Forrest Vosler's Medal of Honor. Thank you for joining me here today. Please join me next Thursday on December 24th to learn about the story of Medal of Honor recipient Brigadier General Frederick Castle. I thank you very much for joining me here today.